Hello! You're listening to Peaceful Homeschool Podcast with Emma and Beth. I'm Emma.
And I'm Beth.
And this week we're talking about socialization. Oh!
Yay!
That's like the big crazy question that people are like crazy about.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you been asked that question?
Yeah. So many times. That's always the number one thing, and the weirdest, funniest comments, and lots of fun misinformation. The word of the past 2 years. No, just kidding. I probably should edit that one out because it'll get us flagged or something.
Oh gosh. Okay, so yes, socialization. Yeah, I've been asked that question like a billion times. I know Beth has. I know, like, leading a group in California, that was a question that people would send all the time. Like, I'm thinking about homeschooling, but I'm really worried about socialization. And then, of course, everybody we meet at a grocery store or a whatever or wherever we are, they're like, yeah, but do your kids have friends? Do they see other people? All the things. It's a concern. We don't want our kids to be weirdos. I mean, we're weirdos already, but we don't want our kids to be total weirdos. So obviously it's a valid concern in people's minds, but we know as longtime homeschoolers that it's not really something to be worried about. So, like, what sort of stuff can you be involved in?
Well, you can be involved.
You've been involved
in? There are so many activities that you can find. The thing with being socialized in any part of your life, whether it's if you're in public school or homeschool, is to create healthy socialization opportunities, like making sure that you're involved in multiple groups of some kind. Like, even if your child's in public school, you still should most likely have them involved in a youth group or 4-H or theater or sports or whatever it is that your child's interested in. So socialization is not just a school thing, but it gets labeled as one. So there are so many things to be involved in, whether you're in public school or homeschool.
Yep, for sure. And I know my kids have done like 4-H and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, youth group, and so many homeschool classes with friends, like a gazillion. Like, I can't even name all the classes we've done. And a lot of times we've done classes with just a lot of our friends, like people we actually know well. And then we've done lots that are just with other homeschoolers as well. And then, of course, we've done things like co-ops where parents are taking turns teaching, or going to learning centers, and then just lots of group learning days with friends. There's so many opportunities for socialization. It's great. Yeah,
and it's, if you go find them, you do have to make an effort. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's hard, but you do have to put some work into it and make sure that you're having a balanced experience for your kids. I definitely recommend finding an amazing group, or creating a homeschool group. It's awesome to have that network of people in your kids' lives and your life. So figuring that out and finding one and creating one, or finding multiple groups. There were times that we were in multiple homeschool groups, and that was really fun. So we ended up kind of merging it just into just having like one big group, but there were times it was really beneficial to be in more than one.
Yep. I agree. So what about like the big socialization questions? Like, have your kids ever gone to prom or like a dance or graduation or anything like that?
Yes, to all of those things. And they've even had yearbooks. They've had all those things. They've had wonderful, fun things. They've participated in like different things in the group where there were different themed days. Like they might have at public school like pajama day or something, but they'd have pajama day at the park or different things like that. So they had all the different all those different experiences like they might at a public school.
Yep, same. And then of course the fun part is too that like, I know when your kids are in public school that there's often a certain number of field trip helpers that can go along or parents that can go along on field trips. Whereas when you're homeschooling, for the most part, you're on every single field trip, which is kind of fun too, because you get to go to all the cool things and get to know the people in your community. And you're forging those friendships for yourself as well while your kids are forging friendships. And you're there to kind of oversee the relationships that they're making and the friends that they're hanging out with. And if any issues do arise, you're there to help with that as well, which is really awesome.
It is really awesome. It's really helpful, like to have the people that love these kids the most in the world be able to guide them because sometimes if there's like a kid drama when they're younger, like you can help them see, oh, well, maybe you're offended because of these reasons, and you can help point out the things where your kid might need to work on it, or you can say like, oh, well, this person's having a problem today, they're not feeling well or whatever, and help your child have compassion for somebody even if they had bad behavior. But you can kind of look at like, oh, well, I don't accept their bad behavior, but I can still love them, and just work it out and help them be able to do that. Where it was they're on the playground at a public school, they might not they most likely wouldn't have an adult helping guide them through processing different situations they might find themselves in conflict. So
for sure, I totally agree with that. The other thing too that I think is a great benefit is that we have kids of various ages, and in our groups and our classes and whatever, we've always had kids of all different ages. I really like that it's helped the older kids be able to mentor the younger kids, and that the younger kids can look up to good role models. They can, like learn to listen to people who aren't just their parents as well, but learn to listen to people and collaborate on things with other kids instead of like you're only hanging out with the kids that are your age. It's like all of them learning together. There really is a great benefit on both ends to that.
I love that part of it too. I love that that the kids they don't think of like when they went to go play, they didn't think, oh, I can't play with them because they're in 3rd grade and I'm in 5th grade.
Yep.
That wasn't even a thought. They just, do y'all want to play the same game? Sure. And they'd run off and play. It wasn't they didn't feel uncomfortable, or that they would. I feel like there's some kind of unspoken rule at public school with like kids that are there that they shouldn't, for whatever reason. Nobody's ever that I've heard of ever said you can't play with kids outside of your grade, but for some reason that seems to be the thing that happens when I was in public school. It just,
me too.
I don't think kids started mingling with kids outside of their grade until high school, and and that's when I can remember kids talking to other kids outside of their grade, really, So
yes, for real. Well, and I'm trying to think of between our kids' age, like how old is your oldest now?
21. Yeah.
21, and mine is my youngest is 11. So there's a 10-year age span between our kids. And plenty of times your oldest has played with my youngest, and then all the kids in between, or your 17-year-old with my 11-year-old. And like, they would never think anything, about it, because that's just the way it is. Like, I could think of many times, like, where specifically my oldest was like holding the hand of a 2-year-old in a museum and going around and being like, oh yeah, let's play whatever you want to play. And just how cool it is to be able to see that, and to let them have leadership roles at a young age by being with people of all different ages. Also, for sure, like when kids are playing with kids of all ages, and when I say playing with, like, for sure our kids that are 10 years apart have played together plenty of time. They've played board games, or they've played Legos together like tons of times. They've played tag at the park, or whatever it is. What's that ninja game? Ninja at the park, or whatever. Like, actually playing together. But I think for sure that it helps, and I've seen this in my own kids for sure. Like when you're playing with younger kids, you have to have a certain amount of patience. And it definitely is a learning experience for them to do that and not just be like, oh, I don't want to play when I want to play, or oh, they're knocking my stuff over, or whatever. It's like they actually have to learn to be patient and compassionate. And I think it's really good. I think it's really good. I think it will help them as they get older and into, parenting age to be like, oh, I already have, a lot of time that I've spent having to be patient and compassionate with younger people.
Yeah, and as well as like older people, like kids are, if they're accustomed to speaking to people of all ages and not thinking that it's
Yeah.
unusual to talk to people outside of your grade, like it helps them when they're older too, because when they graduate college or when they're in college, they might be in classes with a 60-year-old. They might, when they graduate college and start their
It's true.
career, they might have a 70-year-old boss. They might, or even a 40-year-old boss might be like, where a lot of the kids that don't get experience socializing with people of all ages might think of it more of like, oh,
Mhm.
this is an authority figure, not necessarily someone I can actually have a relationship with. So
Yeah,
being able to have
that's true.
relationships with people of all ages, I think is really good socialization versus I think that I'm not anti-public school, but just when you really think about
Right.
socialization and you think about kids being in their own neighborhood, in their own grade with people only their own age from their own neighborhood, and they don't really go outside of that.
Mhm.
I don't think that's really truly healthy socialization for good long-term social interactions in their life. So,
Yeah. No, I agree. And um when you were saying that too, like you're talking about kids who are in high school age or college age being able to socialize with older people. And I think even like at the younger ages, like my 11-year-old, she's like, yeah, I could talk to a 25-year-old, like whatever. And I mean, not like some random weird 25-year-old, but she can have a good conversation with people and chat about stuff that, is a mutual interest or whatever. And she's been able to do that since she was little because she's always been exposed to kids of all ages, and she could easily have a conversation about whatever. And I see her go to church or to co-op or homeschool group or whatever, and she'll just happily join in on conversations with people who are 17 or 18 or 25 or whatever. And I'm like, it's good though. It's a good skill that she can actually not just stand there and feel like, oh, I can't talk to those people, they're older or they're teenagers or whatever. She doesn't have that fear at all.
yeah.
Okay, so your kids are not sitting in a schoolroom all day with 39-year-olds, or let's say 30 12-year-olds or whatever. Um, they're out with people all the time. They're getting to know people in the community. They're playing at the park with the same kids every week. And that's assuming that you're going to a group or you visit the same neighborhood park every week, whatever. Um, but for our kids, literally going to the park at least once a week for a good majority of their lives, they were playing with the same kids, a big group of kids, and there would be new kids and whatever, and they would happily welcome new kids into the group and, find common interests and find ways to include them and stuff. And it was really awesome to see that they could easily just like get somebody else to join in on whatever they were doing. Instead of like, oh, they're new and we don't really know them, so we're not going to hang out with them. Not at all.
One thing that, well, not one thing, multiple things I wanted to kind of talk about with socialization because I've been thinking about doing this episode and um is like that I talked to my adult son about it and my 17-year-old and a couple other homeschoolers that are now about grown up also, and I just wanted their input and what their thoughts were, and um the conclusion that we've come to as it's my little gang of adult-ish homeschoolers that I've consulted, um, are that like they do wish that when they were younger they had more than one social group. For some of the kids, they mentioned that, and every homeschool family is different, but for the homeschool families that didn't do it, like Like we really were in one homeschool group and we loved it. It was great.
Mm.
And at that time, when my son was like middle school age, we weren't really doing like youth groups at that time, and we weren't doing other things other than we were just doing our group, which was awesome. But there does
Mhm.
come to be a time when, like middle school is a hard time, whether you're homeschooled or in public school, and like
Yeah.
kids just get these really intense emotions, and they start feeling that they start feeling all those big feelings. And um, even though I feel like homeschooling is a safer place to have those feelings, they're still there. They're still real, and they're
Yep.
still there. And kids in the big homeschool groups that are great, there can still be drama. There can still
Mhm.
be labeling of kids. And
Yeah.
there can still be like some rejection going on, and some rough stuff
Yep.
sometimes, even in the most amazing, loving environments, it can still
Yep.
happen. And so I feel like having what my kids and I talked about, um, is that, and we ended up doing this with my daughter, is making sure she had more than one social group. And her experience has been much different than my son's. And she's and I think that it was more successful this way. So I wanted to make sure I shared with people what I felt worked for our family better this with the second child, because you always screw up on the first one. and
Yes.
and
Yes.
so and so the idea that is working for us is making sure she has a theater group, she has a learning center group, and then she has her church group. And being involved in those three different things, if there's a conflict, or if there is just something else that might happen in one of those, or just where might not feel like she's fitting in during a certain time, she still has
Mhm.
other groups to make friends in and to
Yeah.
have a social experience. Because there was a time when both my kids at different times felt isolated, and
Oh yeah. Mine
my
too.
son was blaming it on being homeschooled. But
Yeah.
really, it was that I didn't make sure, because I thought in my mind, we were in like, well, we're in an ideal situation. And so
Yeah.
instead of me looking and making sure he had multiple social experiences, which I should have done, um, it
Mm.
turned into something that he didn't have the best feelings for. And homeschooling kind of got blamed for a little
Yeah.
while. And so I just want to put this out there for people to know that that I think that having like probably three seems like a really good number, and it's working really, really well for my daughter to have three different social experiences. And when I say that, I don't mean like, because we love to take classes with our friends. Like, so I mean
Uh-huh.
like outside of your friend group, not like, because we did
Right.
theater with our friends,
Yeah.
which was awesome and fun, but to also have a theater
Yeah.
group outside of that group too, so that
Yeah.
when drama happens, because whether you think you're in the most perfect group or not, there will be at some point drama,
Yep.
and it just happens at some
Yep.
point. And just making sure that those kids don't ever feel all the way isolated or alone is really, really important, um,
Yep.
for their health. Like, so yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for
that
sure.
the other thing that I think that kids should understand, and like that I wish I would have educated my son on, is that everybody going through those middle school years at some point, that I've ever talked to anyway, I haven't talked to the whole world, but most people that I've
You
talked to,
haven't?
no. But someday I will, I'm sure. But they most people, so like I'm much more shy, and I went to public school, but for me it was like, I just thought I was the only one that struggled with loneliness or isolation
Mhm.
feelings. But then I found out when I was discussing this episode with my husband, who's very outgoing, had a million friends, very silly and fun and
Mhm.
all that. um he felt loneliness, extreme loneliness,
Yeah.
in middle school years. And so I think that kids need to be taught that it's normal to feel those feelings and to work on them, but it's not homeschooling's fault. So it's,
Right.
like, so I just wanted to
That's a
make
good
sure that,
point.
yeah, because I think it can get blamed if that's your only experience. Um,
Right.
you might blame it on that. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I didn't realize um, is that for my family, and everybody's different, but for my family, we realized that because the moms and dads were so involved in planning their activities, because it was easy, because we'd all be
Mhm.
together at the park. Let's talk about the activity. And we would just plan it out real quick and plan the food and plan all the stuff.
Yeah.
That the kids, as they grew older, did not plan their own activities. And what I'd realized is my stepdaughter, who was in public school, would come home and she'd be like, Dad, we're doing this, we're going to the movies and we're doing this and this. But my son didn't seem to know how to plan that. And
Mhm.
they're the same age, my stepdaughter and my son, and she could plan it out like in a minute and text friends and call or whatever, and they'd plan it all out, who was giving who a ride and all that stuff. And it was like totally different for my son. And so I started
Mhm.
thinking about it and I was like, well, all the moms, we all plan on everything. Like we plan all of their things. Like,
Yeah.
and so he didn't know how to plan a private activity with a couple of his closer friends or whatever. So I think that as they grow
Yeah.
older, us stepping back a little bit, and as a community, I would because if one kid is trying to learn how to plan those activities, but the other moms still don't let their kids plan, then
Yeah.
it's not going to really do much for them. But
Yeah.
anyway, I
Well,
think
and I
that
think we were talking about that earlier. I think part of that might have to do with age too. Whereas normally the age stuff, until it gets to like somebody's graduated and whatever, then it already starts to, kind of seem like it's making a difference because that person maybe's out working in the world somewhere and their close friends who are 5 years younger than them or whatever, are like, we're still in middle school or whatever. Um, but I think for sure, like as kids get older, that can kind of impact that too. Because if one of the kids is, 18 and the other one is 14 or 15, then it might make a difference of, whether the mom's still helping to plan something or
right.
not, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Whereas normally the age thing doesn't even really enter or matter.
Right.
A lot of what you're talking about too, I like it because it has to do with like mental health. It has to do with social learning. It has to do with like that, all of that stuff that we are there to be able to help with. And if our kids are feeling, a certain way and that we can talk with them about it and help them figure out how to navigate it, if they are feeling sad or lonely or upset. And like, dude, like puberty, it's no joke. Like, we've all been there. If we're adults, we've already been through it. But then watching our kids go through it, it is no joke at all. And it really, like, the emotions get so giant and so big, and it can be so hard to navigate things when your emotions are feeling that huge. And so that's what I like, is that we are there to help during those really hard times, and that we still have usually such a close relationship with our kids because we are the big influences in their lives still, usually over their peer group. Most years, this prior to COVID, because COVID has changed the landscape of our lives and has changed, what we were allowed to do or not do in where we lived before, and I'm sure where I live now. But before COVID, it was like 7 days a week we could be busy with activity. Literally 7 days a week we could have something going on. We could have several events in a day. We could, I remember in younger years when our kids would first meet at ballet lesson, and then they would go to homeschool park day after ballet lesson, and then they would go to this art class, this homeschool art class that some of our kids were in. And, or we would go roller skating, and then we'd eat lunch together, and then we would go to parkour. And it's like you're doing several things each day. And so the idea that there is, a problem with socialization with homeschoolers, it's really like the opposite. And I know you guys have experienced that, and so have we, that it's like you actually have to take a step back from so many activities because it's way too much. There's not time to be home if
Right.
you're at every activity that there is to do.
Right. You have to learn to protect your time at home. And it's so funny because when there's so many fun activities to participate in that you can totally
Yeah.
not get your homeschool done, like if you
Yeah.
do sit down work, that
Hmm.
that if you don't plan for it and protect some days of the week to be able to get some of that stuff done, because it's really easy to overbook yourself with how many awesome there activities there are to be involved in.
Yeah, totally. And I found that when my kids were young, and I found that still as they got older, like we have to make time to be home doing stuff. And I mean, because we homeschool year round, it makes it easy for me to say, well, I don't have to stress as much about when we're getting the schoolwork done because we get a lot of our schoolwork done in the summer. That makes me feel like, some of the pressure is off for during the school year or whatever. But otherwise, we would not be able to have participated in as many activities as we did because, or as we have done, because it would be too crazy. There's so much going on all the time that you could be doing. And even when there's not stuff going on, you can make up all your own stuff. You could be like, oh, we're doing this history lesson and we're going to go to the Indian Museum. We're going to go here and we're going to go there. And it's too much.
Yeah. I was gonna say that when I thought a lot about homeschooling, I mean socialization and homeschooling and people's big fear of it,
Mm-hmm.
I always just think like, why do we discount as a culture family time as being one of the most important socialization experiences you could ever possibly have? And like what we learn
Such a
in
good
our
point.
home, we learn in our home about conflict. We learn in our home about forgiveness, about listening, about you know, loving, about getting mad. We learn about all those things with the most important people who love us the most of all, in the safest
Yep.
place of all, to
Yep.
experience all those feelings and to learn how to deal with them. And if we're away from our family most of the hours of the week, and then we're away from them at nighttime doing sports activities away from our family, and we're never, not never, but mostly most of the hours of awaking hours of our lives, if
Mm-hmm.
we're away from our family, we're missing out on some of the most important experiences that we could ever have in socialization. Like when we're not given those opportunities, I feel like that could be, and I don't know, a big part of why there are so many more issues now with people not feeling connected in our culture and our society, is because we took them away from the most important connections from when they're little tiny kids, like for so many hours of the day. I don't know if I'm just being
Mm-hmm.
crazy or rambling on too long, but I have thought a lot
No,
about
I
it.
like it. You're making me ponder this.
So I think that socialization, number one, needs to come from the family.
Yeah. Well, and like I think if there's, certain things that we've been shown over the past 2 years when you are just with your own family and nobody else, and I think that that has definitely, hopefully for most people, been a strengthening, of the family unit, and a recognition of how important that is. And really at the end of the day, like, you move away, things change in your life, situations change, your family is always there, at least hopefully. um so having your kids and yourself and your spouse and whatever, all of you have such a strong relationship that can be counted on forever, like that's super important, like so
Yeah.
super important. I like that you brought that up. That's really good. um Now you like blew my mind a little bit, so I have to like think about that. Um, but okay, so the biggest difference I would say in socialization is that the parents, when they're younger especially, have to find or create the opportunities, because otherwise, if you just stayed home all day with your little kids, obviously they're not going to find a cool class to go attend, or they're not going to, be able to create some event that or field trip or something that you can go to. Um, so it is on the parents to seek out things to do in the area, Meetup is a really great place to look. Facebook is a good place to look. There, you can look online and just search for homeschooling groups in your city or your county or your state. Um, there are so many amazing groups out there that you can find, and so many great activities and classes that are geared towards just homeschoolers, because a lot of businesses and rec centers and stuff, they have stuff going on in the evenings and weekends for people who are in public school, but they also like to find ways to, have an income during the times when all the public school kids are at school. And so that's when you will find a lot of homeschool classes going on that you can get involved in. And if you don't find what you want, you can build it. And if you're not comfortable doing that, find another homeschool family or two and work together to build it. Whether it's just hosting a class together or play dates or activities or whatever, you can build it and you can put it out there for other homeschoolers to join you.
Yeah. And I do think we talked about it before, but I think we will be doing a podcast episode about Emma's amazing group building skills, and pick her brain for like how to make a successful homeschool group. Because for those people that are in an area that don't have one, or that they haven't found one that they sync up with yet, it would be really good, because you did come up with an amazing way to make a really good homeschool group happen, and it was very successful. So I think that I think picking your brain on that on another episode. And since I'm on that right now, if you have questions about that, make sure you comment on our posts or contact us through our website, and so that we can make sure we address it on that episode. So
yeah, totally, because that would be good if there are things that people are curious about or wanting to know or whatever, that we can talk about it and we'll know in advance. I mean, honestly, we joke about the socialization question a lot. There's like this silly video that my kids still love to watch that we watched a billion years ago, which is like on YouTube, about how do you socialize your children. And it makes us laugh so hard because I know how ridiculous it is. My kids know how ridiculous it is. Most other homeschoolers know how ridiculous it is. But people who are new to homeschooling don't know that. People who aren't, familiar with what homeschooling can really look like, they don't really know, and they really are concerned. And it may be that your grandma or your, neighbor or whatever is concerned that your kids won't have any friends and they won't know anybody, won't know how to talk to people, and they'll be weirdos and whatever. And I mean, again, we're all weirdos, but they have concerns. And so the good thing is that we're here to tell you, like, it's not a concern. You just have to do some work to find out where you can find the other homeschoolers and start getting connected.
Yeah.
And then start protecting your time, because
and there's more,
too much socialization out there.
And I would guess that in most areas there are more groups or opportunities than you might think, unless you're really looking for it. So don't think that you're in isolation as a homeschool family. Like, really seek other people or learning centers, and you'll find it. You just have to keep looking. And if you find a group that doesn't quite match up to what works for your family, keep on looking. Like, don't think, oh my gosh, all the homeschoolers are weird, so I'm never going to go to a homeschool group. Just know that you just haven't found the right group, because there are some real weird groups out there. Not gonna lie. There are some weirdos.
That is true. We have encountered various groups that were like, oh no, that does not work for us. And like the first group that I ever went to, I was like, oh no, this is not the right group for me. And Beth and I have tried some weird co-op that did not work for us.
Yeah, it was very odd.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a group out there for everybody. For the most part, you just have to keep looking until you find the one that works well for you. And don't go once and think, well, I didn't click with anybody, so I'm not going to keep going. You have to go a few times, and not the same people may not be there every single week at every single event. So you want to go several times and meet a variety of people until you start to see, like, do we kind of match up at all? Or is this like totally not fitting in at all with our morals or our values or whatever it is. But I mean, for sure, the groups are out there, the activities and classes and stuff are out there, and you just got to look around. Okay, so it's been super exciting to see so many people listening to our podcast or viewing our site or reading the blogs or whatever, and see some of our reviews, which is super exciting. Thank you for giving us reviews. Woohoo! And to see where people are viewing from. There have been, I don't know, maybe like 5 different countries or something where people are listening. So if you're a Canada listener, woo! Germany, yeah. I don't know where else was there, Beth.
India.
United Kingdom, woo! India, woo! Represent. No, wherever you're listening to, we're super grateful, like so super grateful. And like Beth said, if you have questions or comments or the other things, Beth is really good at this part.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm really good, but let's see if I can do this. So, yeah, no, if you could comment on Facebook posts, or if you have questions, please, please, please contact us, because we want to put content out there to help you and help your families and friends, and we want to help. So we want to share the stuff that we learned over all these years. And so yeah, check out our website. It's peacefulhomeschool.com. And our Facebook page is the same. Look for Peaceful Homeschool, or Instagram. We're building our Instagram. So please go over there and find us on there, and follow us and all that stuff, and share, please, because we want to help people. So we are very grateful that you listened today. So thank you so much.
Yay! Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.